Welcome to Live, Laugh, Shut the Fuck Up and Listen. I'm your co-host, Katie L. Eades, Chief Owl at Outstanding Women Leaders Professional Coaching and Podcast, on a mission to host 100 million witty and wise conversations that disrupt the way you think and inspire you to shut the fuck up and listen.
And I'm Marissa Senzaki, a holistic career coach and startup consultant on a mission to make human resources more humane. In this week's episode, we discuss the idea of mental fitness. Is it just a rebrand of mental health? And what the fuck is positive intelligence?
Yes, is positive intelligence really positive and or intelligent? We're going to let you decide because you are your own inner authority. You will know what's best for you. But today we're going to pick apart a little bit of this research, explain what's happening here, and whether or not there's anything positive about it or intelligent / worth your time. That's what a 5-1 line does best.
And Katie, I know you've had some personal experience being trained by our thought leader this week, Shirzad Shameen. I don't know if I'm saying his name correctly. He was the CEO of Coactive. Is that correct? Coaching
Coactive Training Institute, where I received my CPCC and also my ACC through ICF certified. So he, I think, has spent quite a time in the coaching arena.
And according to him, he says mental fitness can be defined as having and maintaining a state of well-being and cultivating awareness of how we think, behave, and feel. That just sounds the same as mental health and self-awareness to me. What's the difference there?
Yeah, I do think the mental fitness is a rebrand of mental health. Health is implying that you just naturally have it versus not naturally having it, right? And I don't have to do anything maybe to be healthy. I just go through in my life. And fitness is that implication that you're proactive, that there's something that you actually have to do in order to have the health itself.
Which goes into, I know there's this idea of these PQ exercises, and I just think, is this mental fitness like burpees for the brain? What does that mean?
I love the way you put that, burpees for the brain. I would say the burpees are more impactful for the brain than perhaps some of these PQ reps that they do practice. However, it's always a yes and with me. The 10% for me is I have a defined head. I have a very busy mind. It's busier than 70% of people in a different busy way. And it allowed me to actually take control of my mind and know what it feels like to empty it for 10 seconds. I think the beauty of the PQ rep is it's a 10-second practice. And if you've never been able to still your mind that long, as I looked at it, that's a challenge I should take. I should learn how to be able to still my mind for 5 minutes. I would build a plank for 5 minutes if I was doing physical fitness. And it did allow me to build up and gain more of that ability. That the whole gray matter and like all the brain things that he talks about, what does that give me? Nothing. Other than, I guess, a different picture to look at.
It sounds to me also like a mix of just being mindful, but also almost of this very similar to cognitive behavioral therapy or CBT, like just kind of being aware of maybe your triggers and your shadows. He calls them saboteurs. Can you tell us more about what saboteurs are?
So saboteurs are actually your strengths. We've just rebranded the strengths. When we overuse strengths in corporate, when I achieve, but I achieve so much that I don't bring people along for the ride. That becomes an overuse of my achieving. I'm guilty of that. I thought people would want to come along on the ride because I was achieving. I was wrong. So he looks at, but the problem with it is that when you buy a car, you see that car everywhere on the street when you didn't see it before. And I see Buicks everywhere I go, my little car. Dan's always calling them out. We've had this car for many years now, a couple years. That same thing is happening when you're labeling something as negative. And what's funny to me about the positive intelligence program is it's all about nothing is bad or good, it just is. However, these saboteurs are things that we don't want to have, or that we've accepted that we'll always have, but we'll have a place to quiet. And it sounds really self-sabotaging to think that somehow you are designed to sabotage yourself. I guess I would just get more self-sabotaging if I'm looking for it. And that was what I found. And I remember being in my training for CTI. My first line was just diving into lots of different ways to coach others, to learn so I could and figure out what works, what doesn't, what's useful. And sharing with a woman who had been a coach for 20 years, she was a trainer at CTI. I didn't feel like I really was judging as much. And all of a sudden now there's all these, I'm like judging for someone's hair. And then I'm like, where did these thoughts come from? And she was the one that sort of shared for me, that's an area that and my greatest gift comes actually with integrity and perfection, truth, not judgment. So now instead of just looking for more integrity and truth for me, which is the gift of judgment, I'm looking for judgment. So as I shift what I look for, I start to have more discernment as a byproduct.
It does sound like once you identify these saboteurs, it's kind of like then, like you said, it's coming up all the time. You're noticing it more, and maybe that's reinforcing the negative thoughts that you have.
It reinforces that there's something wrong with me. It reinforces I can't trust my mind. It reinforces that I need something outside of me in order to fix it. It reinforces that people are problems to solve. And to your point about the psychology, so it brings in positive psychology, CBT. It takes a bunch of different domains. He has it right there on his website and just put it into this structured system. These saboteurs will track for other scientific systems that you can take to assess a personality. Poor corporate doesn't realize that none of that actually it's not how you help teams work. If they'd hire me, I could help them with their teams working. It doesn't have to do with the personality. Personality is just the avatar, guys. But it's, you talked about backstage about the hypervigilant that you have, right? And always being on the lookout. Educating you on your scarf and what those 5 areas are of the brain that would be triggered by that. And then being able to have something that autonomic nervous system, like that's what you're talking about. A hypervigilant has, you can drive from point A to point B and forget how you got there. Sometimes I'm like, did I run any lights? Like I really can't even pull a memory of doing that. That's your autonomic nervous system. And so we just got to retrain that. And that's what he's attempting to do, but like from a very Pavlovian way where we ring a bell and then it goes away. But that's cause and effect there. It's not from a place of, oh, this is just how I live my life now. And like, it's gone. Like I'm good. I trust myself. I know how to come back to myself. It doesn't bring you that. It puts you on a treadmill of, I constantly need this. And that's a really great business model. Mine is not a good business model. I change people's lives and then they go fly. You're constantly having to fitness, right? You have to keep going to the gym. You're constantly having to go back to the gym. There is no point where you can just relive your life. Where from a vigilant, if you know that your vigilant is really about certainty and you're feeling uncertain and there's relatedness and you're feeling like you're in an out group and it maybe feels unfair, or maybe your autonomy is really being threatened and you're not certain. Like if you know those are the areas, now you know what you value, what's important to you, and you can be aware of it versus trying to look at how you're self-sabotaging. It's just a different lens. And what I found is that people are still fighting their saboteurs. There's no integration. So I guess there is bad and good after all. So is it really positive? No, that's the whole irony for me.
That's, I guess, what I'm struggling to understand too, because I think it's very much talking about saboteurs, self-sabotage, like these are the negative, judges that sit inside of us, and here's how we have to deal with them. So, as we were saying, hypervigilance was one of my top 3. I also got hyperachiever and restlessness. So The work that I do with integrated attachment theory, we talk about core wounds, and it's sort of similar to this idea of saboteurs. So you'll see there's a lot of people who maybe have been through traumatic experiences who are hypervigilant. And for them, a lot of times it's anxious, preoccupied people, sometimes fearful, avoidant people as well. But they're constantly like scanning the room, looking at body language, trying to decipher what people aren't saying. And a lot of that is related to, I think, a story that they tell themselves. So if I'm super hyper vigilant and I think, oh, my partner didn't text me back for 2 days, it must mean he's about to break up with me. And, now I'm going to like spiral in my head. I don't know that like a PQ mindfulness exercise as you've described to me before is going to be the thing that's going to change me then from not being hypervigilant. In that case, it's a lot more about like thinking about what are the stories that we tell ourselves and how can we find different ways to reprogram that, change the narrative, question the stories that we tell, get back into our body. I know you're a fan of the belly breathing, as you've talked about. But I also don't think that we have to look at these as completely like negative entities, because he has these cartoons, right, of like these different figures that are kind of like along on the ride with us. I can notice when I'm being hyper vigilant and then also say that that's just a behavior. It's not who I am.
One thing that you kind of pointed to there was just being more reactive versus proactive. So he does talk about building up your capacity, right? You have to, even when you're skinny, you have to go to the gym. So you're building muscle would be that argument. But I think it would be a lot different if I said to you, Marissa, your strengths are that you're really vigilant. And we need people like you because we need to be vigilant. What are things that you're passionate about being vigilant around? And we would pull out more of the good, right?
Mm-hmm.
And you're very sensitive and aware of the true risks and dangers to yourself, to others, and to institutions, which is why your vigilance is important. What institutions, what other people, and you yourself do you watch over very sensitively? You are loyal, reliable, dependable, and hardworking. You are capable of perseverance. Funny, because we have a show on that. And consistently work towards objectives. The restless in you, though, knows when you don't need to persevere because there's no trophy for persevering. And you're capable of instituting and preserving systems and structures to impose order and stability. These are your gifts as a vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
That is a different story than these are your problems. These are your negative behaviors. These are how you choose to self-sabotage, and it comes from XYZ. Now, and then there's some key areas of coaching then for the vigilant. One of it is just exposing the lie for yourself. You're looking for safety every single time, vigilant.
Mm-hmm.
And you're aware of true risks. So what are your true risks? Write them down. If they don't meet that list, you can let them go. And if you're like, that's harder, go wash your hands under cold water. Go hop in a cold water shower. Go take a walk. You need to shock your system when you want to disrupt a vigilant. This is too kumbaya. You need to change the nervous system response. Right? The environment that you're in is all, whatever, even changing rooms, right, would bring you into a different place of exposing the lie. You'd have a different perspective if you were standing in the bathroom versus the bedroom versus a living room versus, public. And then, you get an 80-20 bucket. 20% of the thing out of all 10 things that you feel vigilant about today, only 2 of those you actually get to care, and the rest you keep throwing out. If you were at work, you would do that with your tasks, with your priorities. That would be it. That's a lot different than the work. So like, I hate to throw babies out with bathwater. Like, yes, there's psychology in here. Yes, there's some cool things. I am reading from material that I learned as a result, and no one even knows where this document lives, because this document, I think, was created by someone that was in the program like myself. It's a crowdsourced program. and that is how I used it. I would send that reading of here's your key strengths, here's how to coach yourself through it. That is empowering because I'm putting you to you. I'm giving you the ability to go into your body and to be able to trust yourself again, not your self-sabotaging. No, you just don't trust yourself right now. If you trusted yourself, you wouldn't be so hyper vigilant. You would just be vigilant and say that one doesn't matter.
So what I'm hearing from you is it's not so much about saboteurs, but looking at what are the positives that come from that and how is that the gift?
Yeah. If you focus on the gift, you're getting more of the gift. Oh man, Katie, I have to do a PQ rep every time I find my gift. I did 30 PQ reps today. That to me, that would be a positive intelligence. But when I found out that I'm supposed to do these reps more often when I'm stressed, well, guess what I'm wiring my brain for, Pavlov? Stress equals PQ reps now. Before you know it, all that is now trained, that doesn't. And this is what happens with experts who masquerade as people a little bit. There's a little fuzziness. I believe he's taken some neuroscience classes, but I don't know that he has the PhD in neuroscience. And also, if we do, that's my favorite part is the quote, is we're missing the mark. The quote, "It is our brain that orchestrates our entire experience of our lives." Yes. For this man, it is true. His brain has orchestrated the entire experience of his life. And his soul, his purpose and meaning, his body is missed out.
And I think it's important, kind of why we have this podcast and why we like to talk about these topics is to really also understand who is the thought leader and what is their lived experience and what is the expertise they have to tell you this. So yes, his background is in coaching. I saw one web search result that said he had a PhD in neuroscience, but when you go to his actual positive intelligence website, his biography doesn't mention it. He has a bachelor's in psychology. He has a electrical engineering? Wait, let me double check which one that was. He has a MS in electrical engineering and an MBA. So this could be his opinion. Maybe he's pulled it from research of others, but it doesn't mean that he's the expert on the brain. And because he says your brain controls everything above emotion and your gut, doesn't necessarily mean that's 100% true for everyone.
And I love a good yes and. So, yes, he's in his body because he's meditating. So yes, he's experiencing other things, but the brain is really running the show. And here at Shut the Fuck Up and Listen, we're here to remind you that your body runs the show. If you've ever skied, your brain was not in charge, your body was. If you've ever been around a horse, your brain and words are no good there, but your heart is speaking. Horses sense and know. Our heart has a brain. There's 40,000 neurons in there. And there's even more of those in our gut. So we have 3 brains. All of them are orchestrating our experience of our lives. And the one upstairs is the AI. I know that we like to bounce ideas off of AI. But if you don't check your research, you might find out AI just used a bunch of bullshit on you. Your AI is not your decision maker. Your body is. And unless you're self-projected and then you get your words out and then someone else has to tell you. That's like 1% of the population. We can talk. But your body, your gut, for us 70% generators. The emotional wave for those that have them, the understanding how to ride their emotional wave so they know when to make the decision. The body knows. So I'm going to yes and on your brain orchestrating the entire experience of your life. Shirzad doesn't know, or I shouldn't say he doesn't know. I don't know what he knows. He has missed the intelligence of the other 2 brains in the body. And we've also have a miss in positivity. So for me, this is not only not positive, it's missing intelligence.
And there are scientists who believe and have done studies to show that you have an emotional reaction to things before you have the thought in your
The
brain.
heart is feeling it and it's sending
Mhm.
signals. You have this nervous system that runs up your entire body. We don't have muscle memory, we have nervous system memory. The muscle grows and contracts. The brain has net pathways that grow and contract, but the nervous system is remembering. So that whole like body remembers and keeps score thing. It
Yeah.
also means the body doesn't have to remember it the same. The heart doesn't write the same story as the brain. The heart doesn't have a limbic system. The heart doesn't have your basal, your little, like whatever the short term and long term, I'm terrible, the amygdala, all the things. You don't have that in your heart. And we know through heart transplants that people will have memories of the previous patients. Their taste buds will change. That's how powerful the brain heart is. Their hobbies will change. And they've solved 2 murders through heart transplants. That intelligence should at least have a seat at the table in orchestrating your life. And if you are like me, where I used to post a lot of heart brain fighting each other, this is the depression, this is what's happening, people. I like my third one, the gut, because I'm a generator, so this is great, is like they're the decision maker, is the third one. And the gut is a black and white, yes or no. We don't predict the future. We predict the next step type of gut brain for those of us that have it, 70% of us at least.
I don't think our brain is necessarily our enemy. I think sometimes we might struggle between brain, heart, and gut. I mean, the gut brain and the head brain. But I think what's interesting is this thought of saboteurs and that our brain is kind of running the show and we have to kind of quell it or do these mental exercises. Yeah. But you know, to just bring like a whole different thought to the table, the IAT training that I've done, that woman, Thais Gibson, who's the therapist who trained me, she doesn't believe that there is such a thing as self-sabotage. She believes it's just a subconscious need that is pretty much in like conflict with your conscious desire. So you have a subconscious need you're trying to get and a conscious desire. So in the case of hypervigilance, you know, that might be your need for safety and to feel safe and secure and have you know, certainty in something, and then your brain is putting you in a different direction maybe. But I like the idea that it's not self-sabotage, because then you don't have to feel like, oh, there's just a natural part of my body that's against me for some reason.
When you were talking earlier, I wrote down self-sabotage isn't a thing. It's not a thing. You know, if you're procrastinating, you're just telling yourself something, which is probably that, you know, you don't need to get it done right now. Also, the safety that we talk about, the safety is always in us. We had a conversation about boundaries. They're not something you put on other people, but also the safety is within. When we trust ourselves, you know, we're like the oak tree, the one line of certainty. So anytime anyone talks about certainty and vigilance, I perk up. This has been my life's work. I've got a one line, my unconscious personality. So the oak tree underneath the roots is steady. It's good. And so it doesn't mind the swaying. It doesn't mind when branches fall off. You don't need that fucking branch. You don't. And those leaves, you don't need those either. You just need your roots, and that is in you. And so this, when we are looking for outside safety, that's coming back home to us.
I like that you have the tree analogy, because I've thought of tree analogies too. When we talk about like CBT and like the reprogramming the stories that we're telling ourselves, to me, like the negative stories that we tell ourselves are just the leaves, and we can let those leaves fall off. We're still the same tree, but we can let go of certain things.
We're going to get new stories.
Yeah.
And what's fun about a tree is, as we've studied them more, when the storm comes, it retreats into its roots. So the leaves will furl in, and all the energy, the resources the tree has will come down. And trees feel, if you want to be into the sentient beings, you know, there's more and more evidence for that. And we also know that trees can't grow in a biodome. They can't grow without storms. They can't grow without losing branches. If you've ever pruned a tree, which Dan does quite often, and then I'm like, it's so bald and it's so sad. It's in its depression era. And then the next season, it's just so beautiful. You just have like this idea that we're self-sabotaging. No.
Yeah. So when I think of saboteurs, I think of almost like holding on to those branches that you don't need anymore and being like, well, it's there, I'm going to keep it there and I hope that it sprouts new leaves, when sometimes all you need to do is prune it back, right?
Yeah. And then so your vigilant will always be there. And we're so grateful that vigilant will always be there. And this metaphor then allows you to stand into your oak tree-ness. That first line, in your chart, you can have first line energy in other places, as the kids say, if that's your IQ, Marissa. So that's where you, and in your pearl, which is your money line, as they say. Those are areas where you're always going to grasp for certainty and safety. And so for you to just know that you will only ever find that within. That's it, guys. We've solved mental health. I remember that talked about, when I see people with MBAs, what that lets me know is that they're going to be great at selling me and getting me into some type of business. And this one I got drug in by a 6-2. Otherwise, I wouldn't have learned as much. And this sheet that I read from, I could have paid less for, but it was worth the knowledge. So, there's always something positive and intelligent to gain in the 10% that we can agree with, and the yes and in my toolkit as a coach, there are several things that have been really useful. But as a theory, as a practice, as a place to take your clients from point A to point B, you're going to run out of gas. You're going to if you stay on the treadmill and do it right, you're going to go around and around and around and forget to get out. And what I love about the work that we get to do is that there is an end. There is a transformation, and it's permanent. It's a nervous system that's rewired. It's a story that's rewritten that serves. The only thing sabotaging you is holding on to your stories. And that's not really something you're doing consciously. So you can just forgive yourself now.
We don't have to hold on to the story. We don't have to over-identify. And, almost
all. I would like to put that out. We also don't have to identify as anything more than the soul that you are. So when we identify with where we are in life, the comparison game, it's just a reminder that the experiences that we're here for are soul experiences. The brain is orchestrating survival. So if your brain, the soul has experiences it wants to have, whether that's traveling to Greece or this conversation right now, which is very soulful for me.
So how would you feel about telling your saboteur to just shut the fuck up?
So sometimes we Bob Newhart it, right? Bob Newhart, great YouTube. People should just Google Bob Newhart. Stop it. Shock it. When you have a behavior you don't want, when my mom used to smack my hand when I touch something, I don't think we're supposed to hit kids, but I'll tell you what, I didn't put my hand in the light socket again. I didn't, I was close. I didn't actually try to do that. I think you can use words for kids too, but if words aren't working, go run your hand under cold water, go move to an environment, do something different with the energy. And energy follows thought. So think about something different. You interrupt it, you shock it, then you learn how to trust yourself that, you're parenting yourself there. If you can do that, then you have self-acceptance. You can also just accept and allow. Oh, these are the thoughts I'm having right now. Okay. What else we got in there? I sometimes do that. Actually, I take that back. I haven't done that since before I moved, but when I was moving, it was really stressful.
Yeah. I tell my,
I was very scared.
I tell my brain it's just a thought. If I ruminate on that thought for too long, okay, thanks. That's enough. Put that to the side. And like changing scenery, I take Millie for a walk, or I just do something else to get my body moving, and in a different state.
So 3 steps for me would be allow. So sometimes I just have like, oh,
Mm-hmm.
like what else we got? I don't need to interrupt it. Like just let it go. 90 seconds is emotions. Let it wash over you. And then the second thing is accept. Lord, give me the strength to accept things I can change. More strength for those I can't. And then you embrace. I wrote a blog post after I had that talk about it in that blog post. Fuck, if I'm going to struggle and have a moment, I should at least let people know about it so someone else can learn. You find, once you've embraced it, once you embrace the vigilant, why it can't sabotage you anymore. You've embraced it. You've integrated it. It's a part of you. This parts work, maybe we talk about that next.
I think the important thing is not to spend so much time, again, like we're saying, like identifying it as this negative part of you that has to be fixed.
Yeah. So shut the fuck up, allow, accept, embrace, and go follow Marissa Senzaki on Instagram at Elevate Your EQ. Is that right?
I'm on Instagram at elevate.eq, or you can go to my website, marissasenzaki.com, and tell us about everything you do in coaching and podcasting, Katie.
Yeah. And you can head over to the Outstanding Women Leaders podcast on Podbean, Apple, YouTube, and check out more episodes with Marissa, with me, and lots of other amazing women around. And visit owlprofessionalcoaching.com to learn more about how you can embrace your own human design.